Everyone ready?
Not every.
Patty. No, I'm kidding. No, she's fine. I'm kidding. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I'd like to call the Haslett Board of Education meeting to order for January 13th, 2025. If we could all stand for the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Again, Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you all had a great holiday season. Our first order of business is the oath of office for Mr. Rick Fritz and Mrs. Amy Clark. Our other colleague is not available this evening, so why don't we come out front for our two members, and I will do this the fancy way tonight. How about that? Why don't you guys stand right here? And we thank you. I appreciate that. Raise our right hand. If you will repeat after me, I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the state.
and the Constitution of the state,
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of a member of Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
and that I will faithfully
Sorry. I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
discharge the duties of the office
of a member of the Board of Education
of a member of the Board of Education
according to my best ability.
according to my best ability.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Not the smoothest, but it's my fault, but hey, we will move on. Now, we have the election of officers for the coming year. First, we will take a nomination for, from someone on the board for the president.
I will nominate Greg Bird to be president.
I will support.
We have a nomination by Vice President Collins and Trustee Polverento to nominate Greg Bird for office of the president. Is there a motion to close nomination for the office of president? We need a motion and a second.
I move to close the nomination for president.
I will second.
Thank you. And the way this reads, I'm making sure I'm following this. All those in favor for the nomination of Greg Bird for president, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. I appreciate colleagues, appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Now we will take nominations for vice president of the board.
I nominate Tracy Collins for vice president of the Haslett School Board.
I will second that.
I will move we close nominations for vice president.
And do we have a second?
I will second.
All right. We have a nomination for Tracy Collins to continue as vice president. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Collins. We will move on to secretary. Do we have a nomination for secretary of the board?
I will nominate Molly Polverento for secretary of the board.
I second the nomination.
And if there are no other nominations, I will motion to close the nominations for office of secretary.
I will second.
Thank you. All those in favor of Ms. Polverento to serve as secretary of the board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. Appreciate your willingness to serve. And finally, we have the treasurer position to fill. Do we have a nomination for that position?
I will nominate Corinne Warzinski for the role of treasurer.
I'll second.
If there are no other nominees, I motion to close the nominations for office of the treasurer.
I will second.
Thank you. All that being said, all those in favor of Ms. Warzinski to continue as treasurer, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. All right, we got through that technicality now. Let's move on. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody's willingness to serve and continue their service. We will move on now to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, congratulations to all of our officers returning and new, and welcome Rick to the board. Great to have you here. So tonight marks our Board Appreciation Month, and I just want to express my sincere gratitude for you, all of your exceptional service, serving as superintendent. I've gained a lot of appreciation for the responsibilities that you all hold, and I have a deep appreciation as well for the seriousness with which you all take this responsibility. So been impressed by the thoughtful engagement in the committee work that we do, policy adoption work, and of course, when tough decisions have to be made, how collaborative you all work together. So thank you all for supporting me as your superintendent and for your unwavering dedication to our educational community. Thanks. Next, I want to recommend Scott Kemmer Slater for our Director of Finance position. Scott brings extensive experience in educational finance. Currently, he serves as business manager for both Gratiot Isabella RESD Special Education Department and is on assignment at Ithaca Public Schools as their business manager. Before that, he served for 9 years at the Michigan Department of Education in their special education office, where he managed over $440 million in federal and $1 billion in state aid funds. Scott holds an MSBO Chief Financial Officer certification and an MBA with accounting concentration, and is pursuing an ed specialist degree at CMU. His credentials and proven track record make him exceptionally qualified for the role, and he's here tonight. So Scott, you want to give a little wave? So if you haven't had a chance to say hi, please do by the end of the night. Thanks for being here, Scott. Third, I have a staff resignation to announce. Chelsea Pennington, a high school math teacher, has submitted her resignation effective January 6th. Ms. Pennington was wished well in her future endeavors. And that's it.
All right, well, thank you very much. We will move on to board reports. And the first item under board reports, as I'm shuffling my paper, so I will keep talking.
Discussion items.
Oh, am I in the wrong, I'm in the, my apologies. I was using an old agenda, I guess. So we are going on to discussion items. The first item will be the purchase of network switches, and we have our old friend, Mr. Cassidy, to talk to us about these.
What do you mean by old?
I mean long-serving. Because you certainly don't look old.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I have a recommendation for you tonight for the purchase of 37 network switches. These are going to replace switches we have in place already that are between 8 and 10 years old. So this is part of our maintenance update of equipment maintenance plan. Network switches are these pieces of equipment that are in closets throughout the building that connect all of our network cabling together so that our network can operate. The network switches that we're getting this time around, they're PoE switches or power over Ethernet switches. These switches have the capability to deliver power to devices on the other end, such as wireless access points or cameras for our security system, or our telephones, the actual telephone handsets. So these are replacing switches that are not currently PoE switches. We do have a number of PoE switches in the district, but as we get more and more devices that require power to be powered by the network switches, that's the recommendation here, is to replace these with the PoE switches. This equipment is eligible for E-rate funding, and for those of you who may not be aware of E-rate, it's a federal program that provides discounts for essentially network equipment and internet for schools and libraries throughout the state, or it's actually a federal program, so throughout the country. Our E-rate discount here for the district on equipment is 50%. So you will notice that we had we put this out for bid. We had a request for proposals back in November. Bids were due in December, and we had 7 bids. I am recommending that we accept the lowest bid from C-High Computer Products. They're out of Rochester Hills, Michigan, and their bid is $71,773.90. The E-rate discount applies to equipment that goes into school facilities or instructional facilities. It does not apply to equipment that goes into non-instructional facilities, such as the administration building or the community education building. One of the switches we are purchasing is for our community education building, so that is not eligible for the E-rate discount. The other 36 switches are eligible for the E-rate discount. Again, our discount rate is 50%. So of that $71,773 purchase, $69,778.50 is eligible for that 50% discount. So after the discount, we are expecting the total cost of this purchase to be $36,884.65. I am asking the board, however, to approve the full amount, just in case when we apply for E-rate, which the application window opens up this Wednesday, we are denied for some reason. This equipment is still necessary regardless of the discount, whether we get the discount or not. So I'm asking that you approve the full $71,773. I do not anticipate not getting that 50% discount. I've been up here year after year after year, and fortunately, we have never been denied that 50% discount. So again, the E-rate window, the application window opens up this coming Wednesday, and I will go through that application process, and I do fully intend to get that 50% discount. So again, the recommendation is for you to approve this purchase and take action at your next meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just had one question. Which buildings would be receiving the upgrade?
This equipment is going to go into all of the buildings except this one. Like I said, we have one network switch that's going to go in over at the community education building, but this will replace switches that we are removing from all of our school buildings. What's kind of nice is we've been able to consolidate our network switches without getting into too many of the details, the capacity of the switch, the size, the number of ports on the switch. We're actually pulling out 51 switches, and we're replacing it with 37. So we're getting switches that have more capacity in them, so we don't have to buy as many. But yes, it will be all of the schools in our district, with the exception of this building.
One quick question, one comment. So when these switches come, is this something that you can install, or do we have to hire like an electrician?
We will
or-
install them ourselves, and so we would anticipate getting these later this spring, and we would install them over the summer. But yes, we would program or configure the switches once they come in, and then our technicians will install them in all of the buildings. So there's no installation on here.
And thank you for all this. I think when we, pull up our laptops and Wi-Fi magically appears, we forget all the behind-the-scenes work that has to happen. So thank you for keeping us up to date.
You're welcome. I guess when you don't notice me, it means I'm probably doing my job. So if the Wi-Fi is not working, you probably think of me. So I prefer that it be the other way around.
Jeff, I know you said we're pulling out 51 and we're able to replace
Yes.
with a fewer number. How many switches, if you know, do we have across the district? Just to give a sense of how often we're trying to replace these or need to replace these.
So you're catching me off guard a little bit, but I'm
Sorry.
no, that's fine. We have probably still in place that we're not replacing right now in the neighborhood of 25 or 30 switches.
So this is most of them.
This is most of them, yes. The other ones we have purchased over the last couple of years, just in smaller amounts, and so this is just kind of finishing off the replacement of all of the switches in the district, but probably in the neighborhood of 70 to 80 switches district-wide.
And to, Jeff, to follow up on, what is kind of the lifetime of these switches, generally speaking?
Yeah, typically, we're looking at, these are 8 to 10 years old. We typically, for a switch like this, would expect to get that many years out of it. These do, by the way, have a lifetime warranty through HPE Aruba. It's a lifetime warranty based on the end of sale date of the switch. So when they stop selling these switches 5 years beyond that, these are still covered under warranty. So we would expect that the warranty will cover these switches, for another, before we take them out in 8 to 10 years from now. Yep.
Awesome, thank you, and as always, I appreciate your thoroughness.
You're welcome.
You always do a great job, so
Thank
thank
you.
you. Rick?
I just had a question regarding the amount that you're proposing.
Yes.
Does that assume the 50% e-funds discount, or does that come after?
The amount, the $71,773, is before that 50% discount. So that is the full amount of, the full cost of the switches. When we actually get approved for the 50% discount, we will pay the vendor 50% of that. So we'll pay the vendor the $36,884. The vendor will then apply for the other half of it through this federal E-rate program. They will get the money from the government.
Gotcha, okay.
So yes, we're asking for the $71,773 approval. We expect to only pay the $36,884.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jeff, just for clarity, I think you mentioned it, but I just want to, the community ed building, which is not eligible for the 50% rate, that is a federal and not a state reimbursement?
That's correct.
Okay.
The E-rate program is a federal program.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members with questions for Mr. Casson?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I always learn so much when Jeff comes to,
Yeah.
comes to present, so thank you, Jeff, appreciate it. Moving on to item 2 under discussion items, the second reading of our proposed new and revised board policies. What an undertaking Vice President Collins and your committee has done thus far and will continue to do. So just a little editorial, I appreciate all the work you guys are doing. So Vice President Collins.
Thank you very much. The 1000s, just to remind you, this is a second reading, and these are pretty basic. So this includes our policy overview, mission statement, and definitions. It's a second reading, so we'll vote on adoption at the next meeting. Even though we're doing that, none of these policies, as we go through the Troon, switching over to Troon policy, none of these are going into effect until August 1st. So we're approving them, but they're not going to go into effect until August 1st, once we get through all of the different series. These are the 1000s, and you'll hear the 2000s tonight as well for a first reading. And then we'll get a July update from Troon and get those in place so that we're good to go August 1st, okay? So policy 1101 is our general policy statement that says we will establish, maintain, and amend bylaws and policies to guide the district with carrying out district functions and duties. Policy 1201 is our mission statement. Policy 1301 is the creation, amendment, and posting of policies. This means that we'll have a first and second reading of each policies, and that they will also be, once adopted, on our website. And policy 1401 is a list of definitions that will be used throughout the policy manual.
Does any member have questions for Vice President Collins regarding the second reading of these policies?
I know we talked about this in December, but it's been a little bit, and so just for a reminder, for some of these where there are changes, we have like multiple copies,
Yes.
so can you talk through what the different copies are?
Yes, for sure. So you got round one, all of us got round one with certain options given from Troon, where sometimes we have to choose, and we do that, just so you know, we've looked at every policy. I think this is number 3 or 4 times, because we do an initial look at it ourselves. I've met with Diane and Patrick, and then we've met as a committee, and then we do that. So we've picked the options, before we present them to you, and they're always available for review in the administration office for all of you and for the public. So what you should also have is when you see the blue highlights, that's where the options are. And you'll see also in your shared drive, there's a folder for Troon adoption, and then there's the working document as well. And Mrs. Lurch, is that what you gave them, was the working document?
So for the 2000 series, you'll see just the working.
Okay.
Where we are right now this minute.
Okay.
We're not finished yet, but it's a pretty good start. Does that clarify it for everybody? Okay.
But at any
Sorry, my
time,
back's
you
too-
can go on the Board of Education shared drive.
Right.
and see all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for Vice President Collins regarding the second reading? If not, we will move on to the third discussion item and right back to you, Vice President Collins, for the first reading of the proposed new and revised
Take your breath.
policies for the 2000 section.
Okay. So this is the first reading of the 2000s. And all of you have had this information in the shared drive to review. These are the bylaws of the Board of Education, and they really determine how we run ourselves in our meetings. That's what the 2000s really come down to. If you have questions or comments about this, this is a first reading. There's a chance before a second reading and adoption as well for further discussion. And there will be a second reading at our next meeting. And once again, I want to stress this, we're adopting, as we adopt policy, they are not going to take effect until August 1st, 2025. Okay. The review and recommendations for adoptions and changes of language have taken place over the past month with both the superintendent, associate superintendent, myself as vice president, and the policy and personnel committee. So be aware of that. And when you see the word reserved, we can explain that as well as you look through the document, is that we are reserving those for later. And sometimes that depends on changes in the law and further discussion as well. But that's where we landed right now as a committee. Okay. These are the 2000s, and they're pretty long, but I'm going to warn you that the 3000s and 4000s are even longer. So I'll take a breath. All right, and please stop me, other members of the policy committee, if I do make a mistake, or you want to add something, or if you have a question, anybody else. Policy 2101 describes the roles of the board and board members. These include our role to adopt policies, employ and evaluate the superintendent, employ teachers with the superintendent as an authorized representative of the board, adopt and oversee the budget, establish and determine curriculum, and evaluate district programs. If you ever wondered what the job of the Board of Education is, that is it. All of those things. Policy 2102 lists our legal name as Haslett Public Schools. Policy 2103 outlines the boundaries of the district. Policy 2104 allows us to have a non-voting student representative on the board. This is something that we've talked about for years, and we had the opportunity to make it policy. There's a lot of flexibility in there, so we just as you read through the language, but we wanted to make sure that that was in there. Policy 2201 lists the powers of the board, those that are expressly conferred upon the board, and the limitations of our powers. These are determined by the revised school code, otherwise known as the law. Policy 2202 grants the board the power to enter into contracts. Am I going too fast? Nope. Okay. Policy 2203 grants the board the power to establish curriculum for the district. We took the optional language about elective grade-appropriate sex education because we do teach this, and it lines up with policy 5420. We also took the optional language on the Sex Education Advisory Board because we have one when we make changes to the curriculum, and we met just last year to update that curriculum. We have reserved the D3 of the policy on financial literacy because this is a new state requirement, and we may revisit that. Right now, we're leaving it as reserved. If the state comes out with a model curriculum or anything else that we might want to add. But just to let everybody know, we do teach financial literacy. It's part of, I know it's part of AP macroeconomics, part of regular economics, some of the business classes, so it does fall in there. The next one I'm very excited about. We are going to allow the district to grant high school credit in a foreign language for students who complete American Sign Language. Yay. Number 4, online learning says that we'll provide basic technology and internet at the schools in the district. Policy 2301 discusses conflicts of interest that could arise for board members and disclosure of any conflicts of interest. Policy 2302 is the board code of ethics and how we should behave as board members. Policy 2303 says what will happen if there is a violation of the Code of Ethics. We chose that the board may initiate an investigation, not just the president of the board. We felt that everybody should have that ability. Policy 2304 is about gifts given to individual board members and is part of policy 3303, which we'll come to, which is about what is allowed there. Policy 2305 covers board member reimbursement and travel expenses. The biggest thing here is that if a meal's provided by a conference or event, we can't get reimbursed if we decide to go out to lunch instead. That makes sense? And if we go out of town for a conference, then we are reimbursed for a hotel room. Policy 2306 is board member compensation, which is currently set at $40 per board meeting. It has been that way since before any of us were on the board, so we just kept the status quo for now. If people don't attend meetings, they do not get it, obviously. Policy 2401 covers board member elections, which we just had. And policy 2402 is the oath of office for elected board members, which we just saw tonight. Policy 2403 says that we have 7 board members who are elected for 6-year terms. Policy 2404 describes how we deal with board member vacancies and appointments. There are no changes here. If there is a vacancy, we have 30 days to fill it. We will publicize it, go through letters of interest, and then hold interviews in public session. Policy 2405 is about board officers. We chose language that says that board officers must be members of the board, which seemed obvious, but apparently there are places where that is not the case. So that's the way we went with that. Policy 2406 described board officers' duties, and there were no changes there. Policy 2501 covers how we conduct board meetings. The first change explains that we're going to use parliamentary procedure, but we gave the president flexibility to manage routine procedural matters. And so we don't get too far into the weeds sometimes of Robert's rules. We kind of gave you that flexibility, or whoever may be president, that flexibility. And so one amendment at a time instead of amending amendments and voting and all of that. So we tried to make it as easy as possible. 2501A is about holding electronic or virtual board meetings. These are not allowed under the law anymore. There was an exception made during COVID, but the only reason that a board member may participate virtually is if they are deployed in the military or if they have a disability. 2502 is about our board meeting agenda and says that the superintendent and board president set the agenda for the meetings. 2503 are the voting requirements. All decisions made by the board must be done in public and in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. All board members must vote, and roll call votes will be conducted to comply with the law. Policy 2504 discusses public participation at board meetings. Under this section, members of the public are allowed to address the board during a designated portion of the board meeting. This is in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. We are recommending changing the time limit to 3 minutes for public comments. This is to be consistent with other school boards in the area. All other school boards in the area allow 3 minutes except for East Lansing and us for now. Meridian Township government meetings also allow 3 minutes for public comments. And there are guidelines for people to follow during public comment, and we added language to give the president of the board the authority to extend time if needed, to allow for some flexibility. Policy 2505 is about board committees and compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Our committees, we have policy and personnel and finance and facilities. Our committees consist of 3 members, so we do not have quorum and no decisions are made in our committee meetings. Therefore, the rules that apply to regular board meetings like this do not apply to our committee meetings. So we've always allowed the public to attend our committee meetings, but there's really not any public participation or comment period required. If we need to meet in private for any reason during those committee meetings, then that would violate someone's privacy, either employee or student, then we can have a private meeting as well. We're not violating the Open Meetings Act, just to make sure everybody was clear on that with committees, because we do not have quorum. Lastly, policy 2506 discusses our organizational meeting, which we also are in the middle of. We did this earlier tonight, and we will be doing this during the first regular meeting of the calendar year, not the fiscal year, the calendar year. Questions?
Do you need a minute to take a drink or something like that? Or-
Good.
Okay. Any members have questions of Vice President Collins?
I do on Rule 2501, Electronic Board of Education Meetings.
Yes.
When I was at an MASB training this fall on open meeting laws, they talked about virtual participation in
Yes.
board meetings. And
Yes.
most certainly, board members who are not present cannot vote.
Correct.
But they said there is leeway now with some of the Attorney General rulings that a board member could call in, they could listen, they just can't participate. And so I think just looking at, I'm going to read this more to make it
Yep.
clear about how that trickles down for committee
It's
work.
quite a long
Yeah.
section, and yes, you're 100% correct. But once we read through all of that, it really came down to, if you want to participate in the meeting, you have to be here in person. The only two exceptions are those two.
And they can listen.
Oh, for sure.
Actively and, you know, reserve the right to share comments. But when we were reviewing it, we thought that their presence here, unless they were disabled or had military active duty, that it would be beneficial if they were here in person to actually have a dialogue and to go over.
So the only question I would have is about health and wellness, meaning that I think COVID taught us, like, if someone has COVID or some other, like walking pneumonia, they shouldn't be at a board meeting. But
The law's pretty clear about it, though, when we went through the policy. So double check it, reread it if you don't mind. And, sorry, I just.
that's okay.
Because we went through that, and based on the true language, we kind of have to do exactly what they said. There wasn't a lot of flexibility
Okay.
there for us, or optional language.
Okay,
But this is the first reading, so we can come back and revisit that
Okay.
and clarify your questions, too.
yeah.
Is that, yeah.
And I'll
Start by
just
that one.
add to that, that there has been, I know this is a new legislative session at the state level, but in the previous legislative session, there has been talk about reforming that for certain, because right now, as Vice President Collins mentioned, it's those serving overseas in the military and those with disabilities, but there has been discussion about expanding that for members of bodies that perhaps are ill and should not be. So we could in fact see a change in that policy too, but here as in most of the stuff, we're following state and federal law.
So I remember, at one of the legal workshops with MASB that I attended, this also came up. And part of it is the definition of participation, right? So you can listen in, even if you were to call in, but you can't ask questions, you can't be part of the discussion, you obviously can't vote. And what came out in that when I attended is that not all school boards live broadcast their meetings like we do. And so in some ways, the idea that you could call in is like duplicate, because I've done this when I've been away at conferences, I've just watched the meetings. So I think part of it just, we have the capability and we're fortunate enough to be able to broadcast these live, so any member who's unable to be here can watch. It's just the restrictions on who can actively participate and take action that a board member would take.
Great, thank you.
Any other members with questions for Vice President Collins regarding the 2000s? And that, again, is the first reading.
I just want to say thank you again for the timeline, the chart that you and Sonia have put together, just kind of showing how we'll move through this. Because it is a helpful, Sonia, it is a very helpful reference
It's
to be able
it's
to
a
see
matrix.
how those will move.
Yes, it is a matrix.
Especially as we're doing first reading of one and second reading of
Yes.
another.
Okay, if there are no other questions from members regarding that, now we will move on to board reports. That I'm looking at the appropriate agenda. And first item is the appointment of 2025 board committee assignments. And this is a fairly easy one. And I, again, appreciate all members agreeing to serve. Mr. Fritz will be taking Cammie Wheeler's spot on the Policy and Personnel Committee going forward. and the Finance and Facilities Committee, led by Ms. Warzinski, will remain the same. So it's a pretty easy little swap in, swap out type of thing. So again, I appreciate everybody's willingness to serve on those committees. So that is our assignments going forward. And I will now take board reports for the Policy and Personnel Committee.
It's me again.
And I have an idea of one of the agendas that you've taken care of.
Yes, guess what number 1 on our agenda was? Troon policy review. So, yes, we did all of that, what we just did. Together, we worked through for about 2 hours, going through each and every policy. We also talked about strategic planning, which is something we're super excited about, going forward and kind of looking ahead for the next 5 years in the district. We had a discussion about preschool in the districts and some different options there, and thoughts and what do we offer as preschool, what would we like to see? And then we looked at fall conference data from all of the buildings.
Any questions for Vice President Collins? No? All right, we will move on to the report from Finance and Facilities, Treasurer Warzinski.
Thank you, President Byrd. The Finance and Facility meeting met, the Finance and Facility Committee met on January 9th, and we had a very similar agenda as to the Policy Committee. Superintendent Malley talked about strategic planning, and then we also talked about preschool.
You did not have a policy.
It was a shorter agenda.
Much shorter agenda.
Any questions for the treasurer this evening? Seeing none, okay. We will move on to a report from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Yeah, we had a hiring and retention subcommittee meeting, and Diane was able to attend. And so Diane, do you want to give a brief update regarding what happened there?
Yes, okay. So the Hiring and Retention Committee met last Thursday night, and this committee has been working on developing some materials about Haslett Public Schools that could be used if we go to fairs, job fairs for teachers. So they have developed a couple of documents that would go in a folder. The next thing is to develop, we're going to see if we can get some help developing a video that we could show potential candidates all about Haslett, all of the cool things that we could put in that to showcase the district. The last item we're working on is preparing to go to a job fair. We are planning to go to MSU Job Fair. That is sometime in March. So we spent some time thinking about what we need. We know that MSU provides tables for, like a 6-foot table for people to come. We know that we can send 2 people. A third person may be optional. And the group was working on the cost. So we have the chairman of the committee coming to see Patrick and I tomorrow, and we're going to go over what we have as an estimated cost. There's a lot of enthusiasm with that group, and I think that, come March, we'll have a very good product to take to MSU and talk to some possible teaching candidates. If it goes well, this is a pilot year for this. If it goes well, then, we will expand it the next year to other geographical areas in the state. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
No questions from board members? Thank you very much. Now we will move on to items from board members. Does any board member? Yes.
I have 2 items. The first one is Superintendent Malley sent out an email earlier today about the Healthy Sleep information session that Okemos Public Schools are arranging for the end of January. This is a special session just for Board of Trustee members, superintendents, and athletic directors. I was the representative at the MASA meeting in the fall. I cannot go to the one on January 23rd, and I'm just wondering if any other board member can go to the one on January 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m.
Can someone speak to what it is?
Yeah.
Is it actually about sleep, or is that a clever metaphor?
That's no. So there was a group.
Yes and no.
What is the summary of what they're talking about is that for the last 2 years, Okemos Public Schools has been looking at the start times of their junior high and high school, and they're concerned that the secondary schools are starting too early, and they have brought in researchers and have looked at different research studies that shows the cognitive patterns and the benefits of starting school later for sixth grade through high school. The challenge they're facing is that if Okemos would make this change in their school district, there's a ripple effect in sports, music programs, other things. And so at the Michigan Association of School Board meeting in the fall, they convened just an informal group of school board members, and I was at that meeting. And essentially they were saying, if your district would make this change with us, it'd be easier for us to make this change. And so back in October, they said, we've scheduled this meeting in late January, and we want to invite all the school districts within Ingham County to come and talk to us about concerns, ideas, how it would affect athletics. So it's not an official act of this board, but it was a very interesting conversation that I attended back in October, and I would go again. And I just think it'd be good to have at least one board member there to hear what they have to say.
I will be in attendance. I've been in communication with their superintendent, and obviously this comes with I do receive community feedback around this area, but there are all sorts of logistical concerns that come up that are very location specific with regards to our transportation, our start times, our end times, our geography, our student numbers. But being able to go to a neighboring district to learn from them on their lessons learned is a pretty priceless opportunity. So if any board members want to go, I'll be joining. So
The 23rd from 7 to
5 to 7.
5 to 7?
And it's at the Kenowa Library and Media Center. And it's in your email inbox. I can also forward it to you.
No, it sure is. It's in there. I'm just putting it in my, I know my children would vote for that.
Yes. So am I.
And if my wife is watching, honey, I'm gonna go to this thing on the 23rd from 5 to 7.
I'm also going to try to do some juggling, because I would love to hear the literature and the research that they've obtained, just to find out a little bit more information about this topic.
I have a second item.
Yeah, please.
I know that from the high school, Mrs. Rolfe's writing class, one of her English classes, wrote letters to the Board of Education, and we've distributed the letters among the board members. I had a chance to read the letters, and so this was from the assignment. They had to write a persuasive letter about an issue that was really important to them. And so I just want to acknowledge that I really appreciated all the letters that I received. Some of the topics that they talked about was a later start to school time, offering a flexible hour once a week to catch up on tests and to study, off-campus lunch, providing more life skills classes, talking or adding compost bins in the lunchrooms, and requiring a computer science class as part of mathematics. And so to the 10 letters that I read, I just appreciate the feedback from the students, and I want to remind the students that one, they should talk to their building principal about some of these concerns, because I think it's really important that you let Mrs. Butcher know that you have these concerns and to begin conversations. Third, there is a superintendent advisory committee, and I hope those students would talk to their representatives. There's also a student council at the high school, and some of these issues are really big. And while I don't agree with all of the ideas, I like the ideas, and I'm glad that they're advocating for themselves. So I would also encourage them to go to a student council meeting. And finally, for the students, if any of them are watching, you are also welcome to come to a school board meeting, and you could read your letter or talk for a few minutes to us. So I just applaud them for writing these very articulate and well-written letters. And it's been 30-something years since I've been in high school, so I just really appreciate hearing about the concerns that they have. That's all.
Thank you very much, and I would echo your sentiments about that. Any other member have anything?
So I just want to wish the best of luck to our high school singers who are participating this weekend in the district solo and ensemble competition. Right at the end of finals week, they're all going to be doing this on Friday and Saturday. But in particular, want to thank all the parents and volunteers at Leslie High School who is hosting. It's a lot of work to put on these competitions. There's amazing judges that they pull from the area to give feedback to these students. And we appreciate, I know as a high school and as a district, those parents in those schools stepping up. And I know that the Robotics Club has been sharing. They've got a competition they're hosting and are looking for volunteers. And we host usually the band solo and ensembles, so just encourage people, to both, if you go to these events, thank the people who are there doing that because they are giving up their weekends, but also consider the opportunities to do the same so we can also be good hosts. And I will echo everything Corinne said. It was great to read the letters, and I really appreciate that that's one of the assignments that they have to do.
Yeah, it's really cool. Any other members with comments this evening? Nope. All right. We will move on now to correspondence and comments from the public. I know that you were just named secretary, but if you do not, maybe we know if there's been any correspondence from the public since our last meeting. I don't.
So other than what has been mentioned as far as the letters that we received from our high school students and the information that was shared about the sleep and later start, we did receive an email from a parent just with questions about procedures at the high school related to some special education questions.
Yes.
And I think those are the only correspondences that I know of.
All right.
And if I miss anything, I will catch up in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And now we have comments from.
Oh, I apologize. I had not gone. Thank you for correcting that, Patty.
That would be Ms. McPhee. Thank you very much. We apologize for missing that, Patty.
I didn't go far enough back in my inbox. My apologies.
So now we will move on to comments from the public. There is a 5-minute time limit from members of the public. This is not meant to be a back and forth between board and members of the public, but if there are questions or concerns that are come about the comments, either myself, superintendent, or the associate superintendent will address those comments or concerns later. So, does any member of the public wish to speak this evening?
Good evening, Jeff Kessler, Haslett resident. Want to begin by welcoming our newest board member, Rick Fritz. Rick is a highly respected member of our community. He served 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. His leadership skills will be a huge asset to Haslett schools. And Rick, I want to thank you for your service to our country and welcome you to the board. I want to make an announcement. There's going to be a town hall meeting on January 22nd from 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. at the Haslett Library. Purpose of the meeting is to provide transparency as to how critical race theory, disguised as DEI, made its way into Haslett Public Schools, proof that it exists, and why you should care. There's going to be a 45-minute presentation followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. I have received over 1,200 documents from FOIA requests, and some of those will be the focus of the discussion. An example of what will be discussed is a document called A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction, Dismantling Racism in Math. A few quotes, quote, while primarily for math educators, this text advocates for a collective approach to dismantling white supremacy. Quote, white supremacy culture in the math classroom can show up when there's a greater focus on getting the right answer than understanding concepts. So I guess if you focus on getting the right answer, you very well may be a white supremacist. I think that those who attend the town hall will be surprised at what's been going on behind the curtain here the last couple years. So I want to comment on policy 2504, which is the public comment. During the policy meeting on January 7th, a board member proposed a policy change reducing public comment from 5 to 3 minutes, which would be a 40% reduction. The following reasons were given. Number one, during COVID, a lot of people were speaking. Number 2, other schools in the area use 3 minutes. Number 3, people can connect with the board via email. So let me respond to those. Number 1, COVID ended 4 years ago. How is that relevant? Number 2, Okemos allows 6 minutes for public comment, 3 at the beginning and 3 at the end. Now, anybody who doubts that can go on the Okemos website today, go to Board of Education and look at the agenda. It says that you have 3 minutes at the beginning, 3 minutes at the end, and you can speak for any reason, and that time can be extended by the board president. Number 3, emails do not get read during public comment. Our superintendent held a town hall a few months ago, and why? To solicit public comment. Our superintendent holds a coffee hour, which I think is a great idea, once a month at Blondie's Barn. Why? To solicit public comment. So I think that when you are looking to reduce public comment by 2 minutes or 40%, I think it sends the wrong message. When you're having all these meetings, to get public comment, solicit public comment, I don't see any reason why you would want to reduce the time. And in conclusion, I want to thank the countless number of parents and students who have thanked me for speaking out. I appreciate your support. I will continue to speak out for and against policies that affect students, because the students are the future of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kestner. Does anyone else wish to speak this evening? Please provide your name.
Roger Taylor, 6089 East Lake Drive. Hi, neighbor. Number one issue here, I mean, this is an A+ school, but why doesn't the drinking fountain work? I don't get that, I mean, I'm dying for a drink. I'm pale, I just got over surgery, and I'd love to have a drink of water. There's no cups. The drinking fountain's not working. And we're not paying our bills? I mean, it's an aberration to me. And also, on this cutting down the communication time, I don't know where you guys are from, but I'm from a semblance of education where the special communication form is listening. And if you cut out 40% of listening, that is a major part of communication. So hopefully this policy, you look at that and change your mind on that or what, but listening is a big skill. I hope all of our board members will take that in consideration. Also, the DEI stuff, I look at it from a worldview on this. It's failing miserably in corporate America. I mean, all your big companies that were, I hate to use this term, woke, are starting to get rid of their DEI policies. Hopefully we'll look at this and base things on opportunity and not outcome. So I appreciate your time and efforts, but let me know when the drinking fountain's been working, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak this evening?
Hello, Terry Geyersbach, and Happy New Year to everyone. I began teaching in the 70s, then home 10 years with my kids, back in the 90s for 23 more years. I tell you this because much of what's happening is not as new as we think it is. Diversity and inclusion have been around for maybe 20 years. I know they were annual themes in the middle school where I taught. It's the term equity that entered this acronym and seemed to twist the other terms around, even changing their meanings a bit. And the family and community engagement, DEI committees, schools have been accommodating new families for years. I remember ice cream socials, and of course now there's the ESL classes and much more services that are offered. Again, not a new concept, because all schools make a point to help new families. Now, responding to incidences of bias, is this a takeoff from just plain behavior issues? Why is there the assumption of bias? How did this change? Is there a different category for just basic behavior problems written elsewhere? Lastly, hiring and retentions are definitely new terms. Here's my confusion. If our Haslett's goals, one of the goals is teaching analytical and critical thinking skills, as mentioned in the town hall meeting a few months ago, what does analytical and critical thinking skills look like? One would think these skills would be best learned by diverse thinking teachers who are open to all viewpoints on every topic the world has to offer, whether it be progressive or scientific or traditional, etc. But if Haslett schools are planning to hire only DEI thinking type teachers, how are we going to get students to think analytically and critically? I don't know. It does not go together for me, and it doesn't make any sense. I hope 2025 takes us back to some of the basics. Keep diversity, inclusion, behavior issues, and family and community engagement as their own separate categories. They don't have to be connected to some big old popular acronym right now. But I would recommend leaving off the other three concepts. I see no need for the categories of equity or biases or hiring and retaining teachers who all think the same way. I noticed you put all the board reports before the public comment, so I was going to say in a few minutes you're going to talk about DEI and all the goals and whatever, but you already did that. But my hope is that we all begin to work more together on these topics in this new year. And I definitely hope you keep the 5 minutes. That's ridiculous. There's not 10 or 20 people up here wanting to talk. That would be different, but I sure hope you consider keeping the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Does anyone else wish to make public comment this evening? Okay.
I just want to apologize, Patty. I was looking through the names in my email, and it was an email that Sonia had forwarded, so I hadn't caught it. So I do apologize.
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate it. We will move on to our action item for this evening, which is the designation of the ISOA representative. The Ingham Intermediate School District requests that boards of education within the county appoint a representative to serve on the Ingham School Officers Association Executive Board. The board meets Wednesdays, typically, first month, and we have a member who has agreed graciously to serve. So I will we will nominate a member and vote on that for the coming months. I don't know how long that term is, but I think
1
it's
year.
for the year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
1 year
that's
term.
what I figured. So I'm open to taking nominations for that board representative.
I would like to move that we appoint Amy Clark to continue to fill that role and to represent the Haslett Board of Education, and I thank her for being willing to do that.
I second the nomination.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second to appoint Amy Clark to represent our Board of Education on the Ingham School Officers Association Board. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, Amy, for agreeing to continue to serve. We appreciate that. Now we move on to our consent agenda with a number of items. First is the approval of minutes for the December 9th regular board meeting. Second is approval of minutes for the December 9th closed session meeting. Third is the approval of the out-of-state field trip to the Art Institute of Chicago that I think we remember we heard a presentation on recently. And then fourth, approval of the personnel recommendation that the superintendent mentioned this evening. And fifth, delegation of board secretary and treasurer duties, which we normally do following our organizational meetings. Six is the approval of minutes for the January 7th Policy and Personnel Committee meeting. And lastly, the approval of minutes for the January 9th, 2025 Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. Would any member of the board like any of those items pulled?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 7 items under the consent agenda. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The 7 items are adopted. Thank you very much. Next is, we will, at the request of Superintendent Malley, we will move into, or take nominations to move in to closed session for purpose of discussing union contract negotiations pursuant to provisions of the Open Meetings Act. So we need a motion to, we'll need a motion to go into closed session, second, and approve that motion.
I'll
So,
motion to go into closed session to review provisions.
Well,
of the contract.
Union contract negotiation. We're good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second to move into closed session to discuss union contract negotiations. I believe this is a roll call. So Sonia, take it away.
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
trustee Brzezinski,
Yes.
vice president Collins,
Yes.
trustee Pulverento,
Yes.
trustee Fritz,
Here.
president Berg.
Yes. Okay, we will now move into closed session. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. I'm going to do a point of privilege in maybe 5 minutes for folks to get a drink of water or use the facilities.